Let's start with the uncomfortable truth: the weakest version of you doesn't survive because life is unfair. Who? Or because you weren't given the right opportunities, or because someone held you back. It survives because you feed it. And the primary way you feed it is through the lies you tell yourself. We all have them. They're subtle. Who? They're often disguised as perfectly reasonable justifications. Who? I'll start tomorrow. I've been working hard, so I deserve this break. This is just who I am. On the surface, these statements sound harmless. But underneath, they're mechanisms of self-preservation for the part of you that doesn't want to grow. See, weakness doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't attack you head on. It negotiates with you in small ways. It's the voice that says, "Don't push too hard," when you're on the brink of progress. It's the internal lawyer building a case for why you don't need to change. Who? And it's persuasive because it uses comfort as currency. It offers immediate relief instead of long-term transformation. Who? But here's the philosophical problem. Every time you choose relief over growth, you reinforce an identity that cannot withstand the challenges of life. You build a self that is fragile, and fragility has consequences. When the storms of life inevitably come, and they will, you won't have the resilience to endure them. This is why the first step in killing the weak version of yourself is not to work harder, not to set bigger goals. Who? But to confront the lies that are keeping it alive. Because those lies are the weak self's oxygen. If you keep feeding them, you can't kill it. Who? Confrontation starts with brutal honesty, radical self-auditing, not the kind where you look in the mirror and say, "Who? I'm doing fine." I mean the kind where you write down exactly where you've been avoiding responsibility. Who? Where you've chosen comfort over courage, where you've sabotaged your own momentum. And I'll warn you, it's ugly. The weak self will resist this process because exposure is its death sentence. It will distract you with blame, excuses, or selective memory. Who? It will bring up every good thing you've done recently so you feel justified staying exactly where you are. This is where you have to be ruthless. You have to push past the justifications and look at the raw truth. You know what you've been avoiding. You know where you've been lazy. You know where you've been lying. Now, why is this so hard? Why does the weak self have such a grip? Who? Because those lies have been part of your identity for years. You've built patterns around them. They've become safe, predictable. And the human psyche clings to the familiar, even if it's destructive. From a psychological standpoint, this is called cognitive dissonance avoidance. The mind doesn't like holding two conflicting truths at once. Who? It's easier to keep lying to yourself than to face the reality that you've been complicit in your own mediocrity. But here's the paradox. Who? The moment you confront the lie, you take its power away. It can't survive in the light of awareness. Once you've named it, you can dismantle it. Who? And when you do, you'll feel something strange: freedom. Not the giddy, carefree freedom of doing whatever you want, but the sobering, liberating freedom of no longer being controlled by self-deception. Of course, there's a cost. Telling yourself the truth means you no longer have the luxury of pretending you don't know better. Once you see clearly, every choice becomes a statement of who you are willing to be. If you see the truth and still choose weakness, it's no longer ignorance, it's surrender. That's a heavy responsibility, but it's also the beginning of real change. You have to understand that killing the weak version of yourself isn't about hating yourself. It's about refusing to protect the parts of you that are unworthy of your potential. And you can't do that without honesty. There's a deeper moral dimension here too. A dishonest person, especially toward themselves, cannot be truly trustworthy to others. If you can't keep promises to yourself, how can anyone else rely on you? If you can't confront your own lies, you'll carry that dishonesty into your relationships, your work, your leadership. Weakness doesn't stay in one area of your life. It seeps into everything. And this is where a lot of people misunderstand the process. They think self-honesty will make them feel worse. Initially, it will sting. It might even make you ashamed. But that pain is productive. It's the pain of surgery, not the pain of disease. It's the necessary discomfort of removing something that's been poisoning you. The question is, do you have the courage to keep cutting until the infection is gone? Because the lies you tell yourself are adaptive, they'll try to mutate into new forms. The moment you expose one, another will try to take its place. That's why self-honesty isn't a one-time event, it's a daily discipline. So how do you begin? Start small, but go deep. Pick one area of your life where you know you've been avoiding the truth. It could be your health, your work ethic, your relationships, your finances. Write down exactly what's happening without softening the language. No euphemisms. No, I've just been busy excuses. Just facts. Then ask yourself, if I continue lying about this, what will it cost me in 5 years? That question will cut through the haze. Because the truth is, the cost of protecting the weak self is always higher than the temporary pain of confronting it. You might lose some illusions. You might lose some people who preferred the weaker version of you. You might even lose the sense of comfort you've been clinging to for years. But what you gain, clarity, strength, self-respect, cannot be traded for anything else. The weak version of you is not going to politely step aside. It will fight for its survival. But every time you tell yourself the truth, you are swinging an axe at its foundation. Do that long enough, and one day, it collapses. Not because you found motivation, but because you stripped away every lie it needed to survive. So here's the challenge tonight. Before you go to bed, sit alone with no distractions and ask yourself, what truth about myself have I been avoiding the longest? Don't judge the answer. Don't rationalize it. Just write it down. That's the first crack in the armor of the weak self. From there, it's a matter of choosing truth over comfort, again and again, until there's nothing left to protect that version of you. Because the most dangerous thing you can do is lie as if you have infinite time. You don't. Every day you feed the weak self. You steal from the strong self you could become. And if you don't kill it, it will kill your potential. The weak version of you survives in the shadows of your own dishonesty. Drag it into the light and watch it burn. Weakness doesn't just survive in the dark corners of self-deception. It thrives in comfort. It's not the dramatic failures that keep most people small. It's the subtle, daily choices to avoid discomfort. It's the soft pillow when you should be up training. It's the extra hours scrolling when you should be building. It's the, I'll do it later, that becomes the rhythm of your life. And here's the reality: comfort feels like safety, but it's actually a slow erosion of strength. The weak version of you knows this instinctively. It understands that as long as it can keep you comfortable, it doesn't need to fight for survival. You'll willingly protect it. You'll build your life around avoiding anything that might challenge it. The problem is, life doesn't care about your comfort. The world is not arranged to protect you from hardship. If you spend years building your habits around ease, you're essentially training yourself to be unprepared for reality. Then, when reality hits, and it will, you won't have the internal or external strength to withstand it. This is why replacing comfort with discipline isn't just about productivity, it's about survival. Discipline is the antidote to weakness because it forces you to act in alignment with your higher self, not your momentary feelings. It builds an internal architecture strong enough to bear the weight of life. Think about it this way: comfort is reactive. It responds to your impulses. Discipline is proactive. It shapes your identity before the test comes. Comfort asks, what do I feel like doing? Discipline asks, what would the strongest version of me do right now? And those two questions will lead you to entirely different lives. The challenge is that discipline is often misunderstood. People treat it like punishment, as if it's some grim set of restrictions designed to strip joy from life. But real discipline is not about deprivation. It's about freedom. It's about building the strength to say yes to what truly matters and no to everything that robs you of your potential. Here's the paradox. The more disciplined you become, the freer you are. Because when you live without discipline, you're actually at the mercy of your weakest impulses. You can't trust yourself. You can't rely on yourself. You live reactively, pulled in every direction by mood, fatigue, and temptation. That is not freedom, that's captivity. Discipline is what breaks those chains. But let's be clear, discipline is not a switch you flip. It's a muscle you build. And like any muscle, it grows through resistance. That means you have to deliberately place yourself in situations that challenge you. Who? You can't accidentally become disciplined. You have to design your life in a way that makes discipline unavoidable. Who? And this is where most people fail. They try to feel disciplined instead of structuring their life so that discipline is the default. Who? They rely on willpower in the moment instead of eliminating the easy escape routes in advance. If your phone is on your nightstand, you will scroll. If the junk food is in your cupboard, you will eat it. If Netflix is one click away, you will watch it. That's not a character flaw. It's human nature. Who? Discipline means acknowledging that nature and building an environment where the strong choice is the easiest choice. Who? This is also why replacing comfort with discipline is not a one-time decision. It's not enough to just get motivated. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes based on mood, weather, sleep, and circumstance. Who? Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It's the commitment you've made to your higher self, regardless of the mood of your lower self. From a psychological perspective, this is about identity. The weak self operates on feeling, the strong self operates on standards. Who? If you only work when you feel like it, you've already lost. If you operate on standards, you act regardless of your feelings, because your identity demands it. The real transformation happens when you stop seeing discipline as an act and start seeing it as who you are. Now, who? Let's address the resistance, because it will come. The weak self will tell you that discipline is too rigid, that you need to enjoy life. And of course, life is meant to be enjoyed. But here's the question: what kind of enjoyment are you after? The fleeting dopamine hit of indulgence, or the deep, sustained satisfaction of knowing you've built yourself into someone strong and capable? One leaves you weaker, the other leaves you proud. And there's another danger to comfort that people don't think about. It anesthetizes you. Comfort makes you numb. You stop noticing the gap between who you are and who you could be. You stop feeling urgency about your goals. You drift. And drifting is the most dangerous state to be in. Because it doesn't feel like failure, it feels like fine. And fine is the coffin of potential. This is why the daily replacement of comfort with discipline is so critical. It keeps you awake. It keeps you sharp. It keeps you moving toward a future you won't be ashamed of. And it doesn't have to be huge, heroic acts every day. It's in the little choices. The cold shower instead of the warm one. The extra set at the gym when you want to leave. The deep work session instead of mindless scrolling. Those small acts of discipline accumulate. They create momentum. And momentum is the great enemy of the weak self, because once you start moving, it becomes harder to stop. One of the best ways to build this momentum is to attach discipline to identity. Stop saying, "I'm trying to be disciplined." Start saying, "I am the kind of person who does hard things." Your actions will eventually align with that statement, because the human psyche wants consistency between what it says and what it does. And here's the thing: the process will not be glamorous. Discipline is often boring, it's repetitive. It doesn't always feel like you're making huge leaps. But over time, it transforms you in ways comfort never will. Comfort keeps you the same. Discipline makes you unrecognizable to your former self. So the real question is, which discomfort are you willing to live with? The discomfort of discipline or the discomfort of regret? Because you cannot avoid discomfort entirely. Life will hand you one or the other. Discipline costs you in the short term, but it pays you for the rest of your life. Comfort pays you in the short term, but it costs you for the rest of your life. And if you're serious about killing the weak version of yourself, you already know which one you have to choose. Every day you replace comfort with discipline, you are starving the weak self. You are stripping away its ability to manipulate you. You are training your mind and body to follow your highest standards instead of your lowest instincts. Eventually, you'll look back and realize you're not even the same person anymore. Not because you found some magical transformation, but because you made thousands of small, hard choices that collectively buried the weaker you. So here's the choice you face tonight. You can protect your comfort and keep your weakness alive. Or you can protect your discipline and watch your weakness die. Only one of those will give you the life you're capable of living. Choose wisely. Here's the truth. You can't just destroy the weak version of yourself. and leave an empty space behind. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you tear something down without building something better in its place, the old patterns will simply return, sometimes stronger than before. This is why real change isn't just about elimination, it's about replacement. It's not enough to remove weakness. You have to construct an identity so strong, so rooted in who you want to be, that weakness can't survive in its presence. Think about it like this: the weak self is like a parasite. It only exists because it has an environment that sustains it: comfort, self-deception, low standards. You can starve it temporarily, but if the environment remains the same, it will regrow. To kill it permanently, you must transform the environment, and that starts with identity. Identity is the deepest layer of transformation. Habits matter, mindset matters, but identity is the foundation. People will always act in alignment with who they believe themselves to be. If you think of yourself as a disciplined, resilient, and capable person, your actions will naturally reflect that. If you think of yourself as someone who tries to be those things, but deep down believes they're lazy or easily distracted, your behavior will eventually betray you. The problem is, most people build their identity passively. They let it be shaped by their past, by the opinions of others, by failures and successes they haven't properly understood. They think identity is something you discover, like a hidden truth about yourself, when in reality it's something you construct. It's a deliberate act. And until you take ownership of that process, the weak version of you will always find a way back. So how do you build an identity that leaves no room for weakness? It begins with clarity. You need a crystal, clear vision of the person you are becoming, down to the smallest details. How do they think? How do they move through the world? How do they speak, work, react under pressure? This isn't daydreaming. This is engineering. If you can't see it, you can't become it. Once you have that vision, you must begin acting as that person immediately. Not once you feel ready. Not once life gets easier, but now. The weak self thrives on the idea of someday. The strong self acts as if it already exists. You might feel like an imposter at first. That's normal. In fact, it's a sign you're doing it right. You are literally stepping into a new identity, and your mind will need time to catch up. From a psychological perspective, this is the principle of identity-based behavior change. Your habits flow from who you believe you are. If you see yourself as a writer, you write. If you see yourself as an athlete, you train. If you see yourself as a disciplined person, you keep commitments to yourself. The actions reinforce the identity, and the identity reinforces the actions. It becomes a loop, and once that loop is strong enough, the weak self is locked out. But there's a deeper layer here. Your identity is not just for you. It's a signal to the world. The way you carry yourself tells people what to expect from you. And people will treat you in accordance with that. If you carry yourself like someone who commands respect, you will often receive it. If you carry yourself like someone unsure, apologetic, and easily swayed, you'll attract relationships, opportunities, and circumstances that mirror that weakness. This is why building a strong identity isn't selfish, it's essential. It changes the way you interact with the world, and it changes the way the world interacts with you. But it's not easy. Because the weak self will fight for its survival by using your past against you. It will remind you of every failure, every time you've quit, every moment you weren't the person you wanted to be. It will say, who are you to act like you're disciplined, strong, or capable? And this is where you have to understand that your past is data, not destiny. The fact that you've been weak before does not disqualify you from becoming strong now. In fact, it gives you the experience you need to recognize weakness when it tries to return. And return it will, often in disguise. That's why you must embed your new identity into every part of your life. Not just in the gym, not just at work, but in how you think, how you rest, how you treat others, how you handle setbacks. Weakness often sneaks in through the small doors, cutting corners on small promises. Letting little habits slide, tolerating things you know are beneath your standards. If you allow those small cracks, they will widen until the weak self has room to grow again. The truth is, the strong identity you build has to be lived, not performed. If it's just a mask you wear in certain situations, it will eventually slip. This is why real identity transformation is internal before it's external. Who? It's not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about aligning your actions so consistently with who you want to be that eventually there is no gap between the performance and the reality. And here's the most important part. Who? Your new identity must be incompatible with the habits of the weak self. Who? You can't be someone who values discipline and still make choices that are obviously undisciplined. You can't be someone who values truth and still let yourself off the hook with convenient lies. The moment you tolerate contradictions, you give weakness a foothold. This is why standards matter so much. Your standards are the invisible walls that keep you from slipping back. They are the non-negotiables. They are the things you refuse to compromise on, no matter how you feel in the moment. And here's the thing, you set them, but once they're set, you serve them. That's how the strong identity takes root. It's built on loyalty to your own standards. Over time, something remarkable happens. The strong self you were acting as becomes the strong self you are. Your thoughts change. Your instincts change. You stop negotiating with yourself about whether you'll do the right thing. You simply do it because it's who you are now. Weakness doesn't just lose battles, it becomes irrelevant. But this won't happen by accident. You must decide right now what version of yourself will exist 5 years from today. And then you must build that version so deliberately, so completely that there is no space for the old one to return. Because here's the reality, if you don't consciously construct your identity, the world will do it for you. And the world doesn't care about your potential. It cares about your compliance. If you let it, it will mold you into someone easier to control, easier to distract, easier to weaken. That's why identity building isn't just personal development, it's an act of defiance. So ask yourself, what kind of person do I need to become so that the weak self cannot survive in my presence? And then, start living as that person now, before you feel ready, before you're perfect, before you have everything figured out. Because the identity you live today will determine the life you live tomorrow. And if you ever doubt whether this process is worth it, remember this, the weak self will always promise you comfort, but it will never give you pride. The strong self will demand effort, but it will give you a life you can look in the mirror and be proud of. Kill the weak self, build the strong self, and become someone you refuse to betray. The truth is, the weak version of you is not some mysterious enemy out there in the world. It's not a shadowy figure hiding in an alley, waiting to ambush you. It's in here, quiet, comfortable, and patient. It has been with you for years, maybe decades, woven into your habits, your excuses, and the subtle lies you tell yourself to make the discomfort of truth a little easier to bear. If you want to kill it, you have to first admit that it's real. You have to see it for what it is, an identity you've unconsciously built, one small compromise at a time. The weak self thrives on lies. It thrives when you convince yourself that you're already doing enough, that tomorrow is just as good a time as today to change, that you're the exception to the rule. Those lies are its oxygen, and the first step to ending it is to cut off that supply. This requires brutal self-honesty, the kind that stings. It's not about vague admissions like, I should probably be better with my time. It's about looking at your life and saying, I waste 3 hours a day scrolling my phone. I've avoided the gym for months because I'm afraid of how far I've fallen. I've stayed in this job because I'm afraid to fail somewhere else. That level of clarity is painful, but it's the kind of pain that begins healing, not the kind that keeps you sick. Once you drag those lies into the light, you strip the weak self of its greatest weapon. But you can't stop there. You have to replace the comfort that used to protect it with discipline that starves it. Because weakness does not survive in the same environment as discipline. The two are incompatible. Comfort, as appealing as it feels in the moment, is the soil in which weakness grows. Every time you choose ease over effort, you feed it. Discipline is the opposite. It is the conscious decision to do what you know you should do, regardless of how you feel. People misunderstand discipline. They see it as a form of punishment, a rigid, joyless routine that squeezes all spontaneity out of life. But that's not discipline. That's control for its own sake. True discipline is freedom. Without it, you are a prisoner to your moods, your impulses, your cravings. With it, you are free to choose the life you actually want, rather than the one your weakest instincts are dragging you toward. It's not about feeling like working hard, it's about having standards that you uphold no matter what. And the more disciplined you become, the less room there is for weakness to sneak back in. But even discipline alone isn't enough. You can't just remove the weak self's lies and comforts and hope the strong self appears in its place. You have to build a new identity, a version of you so rooted in integrity, resilience, and vision that the weak self simply cannot coexist with it. This means defining in specific terms who you intend to become, not vague aspirations like better or stronger, but a clear vision. How do you think? How do you carry yourself? What do you tolerate and what do you refuse to tolerate? How do you act when no one is watching? Once that vision is clear, you don't wait to feel ready to become it. You start acting as that person now. At first, it will feel fake. You'll feel like you're playing a role you haven't earned. But that's not hypocrisy. That's growth. Identity is shaped through action. You become disciplined by acting disciplined. You become resilient by acting resilient. Over time, the actions and the identity fuse until the strong self is not an act, it's who you are. The danger is that the weak self will try to reclaim territory by convincing you to make small compromises. It won't ask you to abandon your goals outright. It will just ask you to cut one corner, skip one step, lower one standard. And if you agree, even once, you've opened the door. That's why the standards you set for your strong self must be non-negotiable. They're not goals in the traditional sense, they're rules you live by. You don't break them because they define you. They are the invisible walls that keep you from sliding back into the person you've worked so hard to leave behind. The transformation is not glamorous. Most of it is quiet, repetitive, and uncelebrated. It's in the early mornings when no one is watching. It's in the decision to tell the truth when a lie would be easier. It's in doing the extra rep when no one would know you skipped it. And it's in facing the fact that you are always one choice away from feeding either the strong self or the weak self. And here's the most important thing to understand: this isn't just about you. Weakness doesn't only cost you. It costs everyone who depends on you. If you let the weak self win, your family, your friends, your community, they get less of you than they deserve. Strength is not selfish. When you kill the weak self and live as the strong one, you become someone others can rely on, someone who lifts instead of drags, someone who inspires instead of excuses. The process is hard. It will require you to confront truths you've avoided, endure discomfort you've spent years escaping, and hold yourself to standards that will sometimes feel impossible. But the alternative is far worse. The alternative is to live the rest of your life knowing you could have been more, but chose not to be. The alternative is to let the weak self run the show until it's too late to change the ending. So here's the choice, stripped bare of all pretense. You can keep lying to yourself, keep choosing comfort, keep drifting into a life built for the weakest version of you. Or you can confront the lies, replace comfort with discipline, and build an identity so strong that weakness is nowhere to hide. One path feels easier now but ends in regret. The other feels harder now but ends in pride. The weak self will always try to convince you that you have more time. You don't. Every day you wait is another day it grows stronger. Every day you act is another day it dies. The question is not whether you can kill it. The question is whether you will. And when you walk out of here today, I want that question echoing in your mind every time you make a choice.